I would also particularly welcome the comments from the Labour Lord, the Minister, about how much progress is being made in sex and relationship education, something I've long been campaigning on, and it's something that really needs to be monitored very closely to make sure it's meeting the needs of our current society. I'd also comment on the words of the Noble Lord, Lord Russell, who rightly identified the reasons why I was persuaded not to push this further at this moment. This wasn't on the order paper on the list of amendments in committee, and it's not normal practice to go further at this stage. But I think it's obvious that the level of debate is going to be very significantly stepped up. Just very briefly, I'm aware of the hour, but I think it's worth drawing together the noble baronesses, some of whom, or all of whom actually, are long veterans of this campaign. And I think the noble Baroness Lady Walmsley made very important points about the context in which this debate is happening now, which is the COVID pandemic, and also about how we now understand so much more about adverse childhood experiences and their impact on children. That's a reflection of how far the science has moved on in the last 2 decades. And indeed, the noble Lady Baroness Finlay, from, of course, her very much expert perspective, was acknowledging how the current law undermines the government's efforts in child welfare and other areas, and how what's being seen in our hospitals, what's being seen by our doctors right now, that was a very much an expert account. And both the noble Lady Baroness Finlay and also the noble Lady Baroness Lister very much focused on the issue of rights. And we are talking about children's rights to be protected from all forms of violence. That's the crucial issue here. And I would just also, in passing, offer my support to the noble Lady Baroness Lister of the need for a Minister for Children. We've seen the acknowledgement of the need for children's commissioners, which has been hugely valuable, but we really need to go a step further, closer to the centre of government. Now, I do want to briefly pick up the comments of the noble Baronesses Hoey and Fox. And they took a great deal of issue with the nature of the language I was using. And I feel like perhaps a better response could be given on this by one of the noble and learned Lord members of your Lordship's House. But from my lay legal knowledge, I will point out that battery is not a rhetorical device, but actually a description of a common law offence under English law. And when we're talking about violence, we're talking about physical attacks. Those are the words that we would use when referring to what happens between 2 adults. We are talking about exactly the same thing. In fact, we're talking about an interaction that we might see between a very large, heavyweight adult and a very light, small adult. Indeed, the imbalance of power is much greater. Now, I also really need to pick up the noble Lady Baroness Hoey's comments about public opinion in Wales. And I'm not sure what survey she was referring to, but I can actually refer to the Public Attitudes to Physical Punishment of Children survey of 2018, a baseline study, in which 62% of parents and caregivers of children under 7 disagreed with smacking, and only 5% of parents thought that it was strongly necessary. Those are the modern parents to which other noble baronesses were referring. And I do actually also have to take issue with the comments of the noble Lord Currie of Kirkale, who, I'm paraphrasing slightly, more or less said, well, it happened to 85% of adults in the past and we've turned out all right, haven't we? Well, I think when we reflect, as the whole of our society has been reflecting, on the level of misogyny, the level of violence against women and girls that we have in our society, I would very strongly question that conclusion. And I would add that, as several noble baronesses said, violence begets violence. We know that's the truth. That is the factual truth. And just to address the noble Lady Baroness Hoey's points about saying that, oh, this is all the research is some kind of activist, some sort of anthropological active research. Well, I would point out that among the long list of organisations backing a ban on assaults on children, we have the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, the Royal College of General Practitioners and the Professional Association for Childcare and Early Years. These are not activists or campaigners, my lords. These are the professionals who know about and are gravely concerned about the well-being of the children in their care. So, my lords, I'm restraining myself and noticing the hour and thinking I will probably, for the moment, leave this here, but I will say to your lordship's house that we are past time taking this action. It's happening all around us geographically. It's happening all around the world. I don't agree with the Noble Lord the Minister's conclusions about complying with the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And I very much hope, and indeed am confident, that the Noble Lady Baroness Walmsley will not need to spend another 20 years campaigning on this issue. But in the meantime, my lords, I beg leave to withdraw the amendment.
Is it your lordship's pleasure that this amendment be withdrawn? Amendment by leave withdrawn. We now come to the grouping beginning with Amendment 83. Anyone wishing to press this or anything else in the group to a division must make that clear in the debate. After Clause 72, Amendment 83. Baroness Greengross.
Lords, I beg to move Amendments 83 and 84, and I'm introducing these two amendments again at report stage, as I believe the issue they seek to highlight regarding older adults needs considerably more attention than it has received to date. After a helpful meeting with the Minister last week, I will not now be putting these amendments